The ground beneath you is moving right now. Our planet's surface is a restless, shifting entity that has rewritten human history time and again. From entire cities vanishing into the earth to modern megacities slowly sinking, the instability of land is a silent, powerful force. This journey will uncover 27 astonishing geological mysteries, and by the end, you will see the very ground you stand on in a completely new light. How did a lost continent spark a scientific controversy? Why are ancient forests rising from the sea? We will explore sinkholes, seismic shifts, and sunken kingdoms to reveal how the land's hidden movements have shaped our past and will define our future. What story do you think the Earth is trying to tell us? A meteorologist dared to question the permanence of the world map. Alfred Wegener looked at the jigsaw puzzle fit of continents like South America and Africa and proposed a radical idea that they were once joined together in a supercontinent he called Pangaea. He was not a geologist, and the scientific establishment of the early 20th century ridiculed him. They called his theory of continental drift nonsense, unable to accept that solid ground could wander. Wegener died on an Arctic expedition, never seeing his idea accepted. Decades later, new evidence from the ocean floor revealed the truth. Massive slabs of the Earth's crust, known as tectonic plates, are indeed in constant motion, floating on a layer of hot, flowing rock. Wegener was right all along. This discovery was the key that unlocked the Earth's deepest history. The slow, grinding collision of these plates pushes up mountain ranges like the Himalayas. Their sudden, jerking slips trigger the earthquakes that shake our cities. This movement is almost imperceptible, just a few centimeters each year, but over millions of years it is enough to open entire oceans. The Atlantic is still widening today, pulling the Americas further from Europe and Africa with every passing moment. This grand, planetary dance has directed the entire course of life, shaping global climate, carving out new pathways for migration, and isolating species to evolve in new ways. The ground is not a static stage, but the main actor in the story of our planet. And while this movement happens over eons, the built-up energy can be released in an instant, forcing us to confront the power beneath our feet in far more immediate and terrifying ways. The same slow-motion drama that built the Himalayas now plays out in the canals of Venice, a city in a silent, graceful collapse. Those romantic waterways and stunning palaces are sinking millimeter by millimeter into the soft sediments of its lagoon. This is not just a natural process, though the ground there has been slowly compacting for centuries. The real acceleration came from us. For decades, the city pumped vast quantities of groundwater from the aquifers deep below, causing the very earth it stood upon to compact and settle, like a sponge being squeezed dry. Add to that the rising sea levels from our warming planet, and you have a perfect storm of subsidence. The Aqua Alta, the high water that floods the famous Piazza San Marco, is no longer a rare event but a frequent and worsening reality. In response, engineers have built a monumental defense named MOS, a system of 78 giant mobile gates that can rise from the seafloor to temporarily seal the lagoon from storm surges. It is a technological marvel, a testament to human ingenuity, yet it is also a desperate, ongoing battle against the inevitable push of natural forces. The true cost here is not just measured in euros, but in the potential loss of irreplaceable Renaissance art, centuries-old architecture, and a unique cultural identity shaped by the water. Venice stands as a powerful, beautiful warning. It forces us to ask how many other coastal cities, built on soft ground and hubris, might share its fate. This is not a new story, however. For a far more ancient and chilling example of the Earth simply giving way, we must look to a place where the ground did not just sink, but opened up completely. Sometimes our need for an answer creates a land that never was. In the 1860s, a puzzle captivated naturalists. They found the fossils of small, primitive primates called lemurs in both Madagascar and India, but nowhere in between. How could these animals have crossed the vast Indian Ocean? The most logical explanation for the science of that era was a land bridge. The zoologist Philip Sclater gave it a name, Lemuria, a lost continent that he proposed had once connected the two lands before sinking beneath the waves. This was not a fringe idea, but a serious scientific hypothesis to explain a genuine mystery. The concept, however, was soon embraced by those who saw it as more than just a land bridge. Theosophists adopted Lemuria as the home of a primordial root race, a spiritual homeland for all humanity. In Tamil traditions, the legend of Kumari Kandam, a vast continent lost to the sea, resonated with this new scientific theory, creating a powerful fusion of myth and supposed fact. The story of Lemuria reveals a profound truth about how we fill the voids in our understanding, weaving science and legend together when the map has blank spaces. Yet the real story, the one eventually uncovered by the theory of plate tectonics, is far more spectacular than any sunken continent. There was no Lemuria. Instead, India and Madagascar were once locked together as part of the supercontinent Gondwana, alongside Antarctica and Australia. Around 160 million years ago, this colossal landmass began to rip apart. India broke free and embarked on a monumental northward journey, crashing into Asia to birth the Himalayas. Madagascar was left behind, an island adrift. The lemurs were not travelers on a vanished bridge. They were passengers on a raft of stone, their fates separated by the slow, inexorable drift of continents. The fossils that once pointed to a lost world now tell a different tale, one of continental fragmentation on a grand scale. This true geological history reshaped entire ecosystems, isolating life forms and setting them on unique evolutionary paths. It makes you wonder how many of our oldest myths of sunken lands and great floods are distant, fragmented memories of these very real, cataclysmic events when the world literally changed shape. Plato's story of Atlantis begins not as myth but as a lesson. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 B.C., he describes a formidable naval power, an advanced island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his own time. This was a society of immense wealth and sophisticated architecture, with concentric rings of water and land. But its people grew arrogant and corrupt, and in a single day and night of misfortune, the entire island was swallowed by the sea and vanished. Plato presented this as a true history, a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris and the wrath of the gods. For centuries, this account has been the ultimate ghost story, a siren call for explorers, archaeologists, and dreamers. They have searched for its location from the Mediterranean to the Azores, and even in the far-off Caribbean. One of the most compelling geological candidates is the cataclysmic volcanic eruption on the island of Thera, modern Santorini, around 1600 B.C. This event was one of the most violent in human history, utterly devastating the Minoan civilization on Crete with tsunamis and ash fall. For anyone who survived or heard the tales, it would have seemed as if a whole world had been wiped away in a single, terrifying day. The story of Atlantis taps into a deep, primal fear, the understanding that the ground can betray us, that prosperity is no shield against planetary forces. It is a legend born from the very real trauma of earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic fires. Our enduring fascination with finding a real Atlantis is more than a quest for treasure. It is a search for meaning in the face of our own fragility. We look at our own coastal megacities, our own complex societies built on fault lines and sinking shores, and we cannot help but see a reflection. Modern archaeology has since uncovered numerous sunken settlements off the coasts of India, Greece, and elsewhere, proving that the loss of lands to the sea is not a myth, but a recurring chapter in human history. Atlantis may never be found because it is not one place. It is every place that has ever been lost to the waves, a permanent echo in our collective memory of the power that lies underneath our feet. And sometimes the earth does not swallow cities whole, but pulls them down in a slow, relentless embrace. While the legend of Atlantis captures our imagination, the North Sea holds the bones of a real lost world. Beneath its cold, grey waves lies Doggerland, a vast and fertile plain that was once the bridge between Great Britain and mainland Europe. For thousands of years, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers roamed this lowland, a landscape of rivers, forests, and marshes teeming with wildlife. This was not a barren land, but a rich and settled heart of prehistoric Europe. Then the world warmed. As the last great ice sheets retreated, massive volumes of meltwater began to raise global sea levels in a slow, inexorable creep. The change was not a single cataclysm, but a relentless, generations-long encroachment. Rivers swelled and saltwater advanced, turning freshwater lakes into brackish estuaries. The hunting grounds and forests that communities had known for centuries were gradually swallowed, forcing people to retreat again and again to ever-shrinking higher ground. By around 6500 B.C., the final hills and islands of Doggerland vanished, and the North Sea as we know it was born. The evidence for this lost continent is not buried in ancient texts but pulled from the sea itself. For over a century, fishermen trawling the Dogger Bank have hauled up more than just fish. Their nets bring up the bones of mammoths, lions, and reindeer, alongside finely crafted stone tools and even fragments of human remains. These are not the relics of a sudden disaster, but the scattered pieces of a drowned landscape, a time capsule preserved in the silt. The slow drowning of Doggerland was a powerful engine of human change. It forced the migration of entire populations, pushing them into new territories like the British Isles and the European mainland. This concentration of people in smaller areas likely spurred new social structures, new technologies, and new conflicts. It demonstrates with heartbreaking clarity that climate-driven land loss is not a modern invention, but a force that has shaped human destiny from the very beginning. Doggerland is the truth that makes myths like Atlantis and Lemuria feel so hauntingly plausible. It proves that lands of great abundance can and do vanish beneath the waves, taking entire ways of life with them. Yet in this act of destruction, the sea also performed a strange act of preservation, sealing a snapshot of prehistoric life in its muddy depths. This raises a profound question. If the ground can hide the evidence of our past so completely, what other lost worlds might be waiting, not beneath the ocean, but deep within the earth itself? The deep ocean floor holds its own brand of quiet violence. Far from the supernatural tales that shroud the Bermuda Triangle, the real explanation for its dangers may lie in the very ground beneath the waves. This area of the Western Atlantic is a geological hotspot, its seabed littered with vast reservoirs of frozen methane gas, trapped in ice like structures known as hydrates. Under certain conditions, these deposits can become unstable. A shift in pressure or a slight increase in temperature can trigger a catastrophic eruption, where the solid hydrate transforms instantly into a massive bubble of gas. When this happens on a grand scale, the chemistry of the ocean itself changes. The water, now saturated with countless rising bubbles, loses its density so dramatically that it can no longer support the buoyancy of a ship. A vessel caught in such a plume would not simply founder, it would be pulled straight down into the abyss, vanishing without a trace in a matter of moments. This is not science fiction, but a documented geological process that could easily account for the sudden, inexplicable losses that fuel the legend. Combine this with the region's notoriously volatile weather, where sudden storms can brew without warning, and the existence of rogue waves, solitary walls of water that can reach the height of a 10-story building, and you have a perfect recipe for maritime disaster. The ocean floor here is not a flat, featureless plain. It is a dramatic landscape of deep trenches and steep-sided seamounts that disrupt currents and create chaotic, unpredictable seas. For centuries, sailors' logs spoke of compasses spinning wildly, a phenomenon now attributed to the fact that true north and magnetic north align in this zone, creating temporary navigational confusion. The allure of a supernatural mystery is powerful, but the scientific truths are far more compelling. They reveal a world where the ground itself can erupt, where the ocean can turn to froth, and where the simple act of crossing a patch of sea becomes a gamble against hidden geological forces. It forces us to remember that the Earth's restlessness does not stop at the shoreline, but continues deep into the dark, shaping our world in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. The same hidden power that can swallow a ship whole was harnessed on a remote island to create one of humanity's most enduring mysteries. On Easter Island, the massive stone moai stand with their backs to the Pacific, their blank eyes gazing over a landscape they helped to create. These are not just statues, they are geological expressions born directly from the island's volcanic heart. The quarry at Raraku is not a simple mine, it is the womb of these giants. Here, the island's ancient volcanoes provided a perfect resource, a soft, carvable rock called tuff. The creators of the moai were master geologists, intuitively understanding the properties of their land. They carved the figures directly from the crater's walls, leaving some half-finished, as if the mountain itself is still giving birth to stone. But carving them was only the beginning. The true marvel was movement. How do you transport a 70-ton block of stone for miles across rugged terrain? The answer may be written in the landscape itself. Ancient lava flows had already sculpted the island, creating natural pathways and gentle slopes. The islanders likely used these geological gifts, laying the massive statues on wooden sledges or simply rocking them upright, inching them along roads they prepared with the island's own soil and rubble. It was a stunning feat of engineering, a perfect marriage of human will and geological opportunity, yet this very success contained the seeds of collapse. To move the moai required vast quantities of wood for ropes and sledges, leading to rampant deforestation. The once lush island was stripped bare, its soil eroded by wind and rain. The society that had mastered the art of moving mountains found itself struggling to grow food. The ecological collapse was swift and devastating, leading to conflict, famine, and a dramatic population decline. The moai, therefore, are more than art, they are a profound lesson in sustainability. They represent a culture that brilliantly exploited its geological resources, but failed to foresee the ultimate limit of those resources. Their silent gaze asks us a difficult question. Are our own modern monuments, our cities and industries, being built on a similar foundation of temporary abundance? This ancient story of resource management and societal pressure finds a startling parallel in another part of the world, where an entire civilization transformed its landscape not with statues but with water. Far to the south of Easter Island, another ancient people left a different kind of message upon the land. The Nazca Plains of Peru are a vast, open canvas, etched with enormous geoglyphs so large they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. Gigantic spiders, hummingbirds, and geometric shapes stretch for kilometers across the desert floor, a gallery of mysteries drawn directly onto the earth. Their survival for over 2,000 years is itself a geological marvel. This desert is one of the driest places on Earth, a landscape of profound stillness. The plateau is shielded from the strong, erosive winds by the surrounding mountains, and it almost never rains. The ground itself is perfectly composed for preservation, a natural chalkboard. The Nazca people simply peeled away the top layer of dark, sun-baked pebbles to reveal the lighter, clay-rich soil beneath. This stark contrast created the lines, and the stable, arid climate did the rest, locking the designs in a state of near-perfect suspension. Why they did this remains one of archaeology's great puzzles. Were these immense figures ritual pathways walked by priests to summon life-giving water from the gods? Could they have been a complex astronomical calendar, mapping the stars and seasons in the desert below? Perhaps they were offerings to deities who they believed could only see them from above. Whatever their purpose, the Nazca people demonstrated a deep, intuitive understanding of their environment. They recognized that this specific patch of Earth, with its unique surface and protected location, was a permanent slate. They worked in harmony with the ground, not against it, to create art meant to last for eternity. Yet this stability is an illusion on a planetary scale. The very mountains that protect the plateau are the product of colossal instability, the ongoing collision of tectonic plates that thrust the Andes skyward. The Nazca lines exist in a rare, quiet pocket of a violently shifting continent. They show us that when the land holds still, humanity can create wonders that defy time itself. But what happens when the land does the opposite, when it does not just shift, but violently explodes from within? Beneath the clear, blue waters off the coast of Japan lies a puzzle carved in stone. The Yonaguni monument is a sprawling complex of massive platforms, sharp terraces, and towering pillars that rise from the seafloor. To some researchers, these are the unmistakable ruins of a sunken city, a Japanese Atlantis lost to a prehistoric cataclysm. They point to what appear to be perfectly carved staircases, wide plazas, and even a massive stone face that resembles a human head. The precision of the 90-degree angles and the sheer scale of the structures feel intentional, as if shaped by human hands. The debate, however, is far from settled. Marine geologists offer a different, equally compelling story. They argue that the entire formation is a masterpiece of natural geology. The rock here is sandstone, a material particularly susceptible to a process called mass wasting. As tectonic forces slowly uplift the seabed, the rock develops sets of parallel cracks and joints. Over thousands of years, powerful ocean currents have exploited these weaknesses, eroding the softer material and leaving behind the stark, geometric blocks we see today. The same seismic activity that could have sunk a city is also the very force that created these forms. So, who is right? The answer may be that both are. It is possible that a natural, geological formation existed here first, and that ancient people later found it and modified it, carving steps and niches into the ready-made stone to suit their own purposes. This site forces us to confront a fundamental question: how do we distinguish the work of nature from the work of humanity when the earth itself is the artist? Yonaguni stands as a powerful testament to the fact that geological processes can produce architecture on a colossal scale, forms so perfect they seem to whisper of lost civilizations. It reminds us that the line between a random act of nature and a deliberate human artifact is often blurred by time, water, and the relentless shifting of the ground beneath us. Death Valley holds a secret written in mud and stone. On the vast, flat expanse of the racetrack playa, heavy rocks appear to wander on their own, carving long, meandering trails into the cracked, dry earth. For generations, this was one of geology's most playful puzzles. How could stones weighing dozens of pounds travel hundreds of feet across a level desert floor, with no one to push them and no animal to pull them? The theories were as wild as the landscape, from powerful, invisible magnetic fields to the pranks of mischievous aliens. The truth, when it was finally witnessed, was a masterpiece of simple, natural elegance. Researchers set up time-lapse cameras and waited. They discovered that on rare occasions, a perfect sequence of events unfolds. First, a brief winter rain leaves a shallow pool of water on the playa. Then, on a cold desert night, this water freezes into thin, clear sheets of ice around the rocks. When the morning sun warms the surface, these large panels of ice begin to break up. A gentle, persistent wind, just strong enough to catch the ice, then pushes these floating sheets across the slick, wet mud. The rocks, embedded in their icy rafts, are slowly and silently sailed along, etching their enigmatic paths as they go. It is a delicate, transient ballet of ice and stone, requiring just the right amount of water, the precise temperature, and a steady breeze. This solves the mystery not with a bang, but with a whisper, revealing how the most desolate and still places are secretly alive with motion. It reminds us that the Earth's movements are not always grand and tectonic, but can be found in the quiet, almost magical collaboration of the elements. If rocks can dance in the desert, what other subtle, hidden movements are happening all around us, waiting for a patient observer to finally see them? Deep in the Peruvian rainforest, far from any volcano, a river boils. The Shanay Timpishka, known to the local Ashaninka people as the Boiling River, is a 4-mile-long stretch of water that can reach temperatures near 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This is not a hot spring you can dip your toes into. It is a scalding torrent that steams and bubbles through the jungle, a place where a misstep can mean a fatal scald. For the Ashaninka, this river is sacred, a place of powerful spirits and deep spiritual significance. Geologically, its existence is a profound anomaly. The river is located hundreds of miles from the nearest active volcano, far outside any recognized volcanic zone. The intense heat is not fueled by magma directly below, but by a different kind of subterranean engine. Scientists believe that large fault lines in the Earth's crust act like deep, natural plumbing systems. Rainwater seeps down through these cracks, traveling to incredible depths where the Earth's own geothermal heat warms it to a boiling point. This superheated water then surges back up under pressure, emerging to feed the river and transform a peaceful jungle stream into a deadly, rolling cauldron. This single river challenges our entire understanding of where such geothermal activity can occur, proving that the Earth's inner heat can find a path to the surface in the most unexpected places. It is a stunning, visceral demonstration that the planet's fiery heart is not confined to volcanic regions, but is a pervasive force, always seeking a way out. The boiling river is a natural wonder, but it is also a stark reminder of the raw, untamed energy that circulates just beneath the thin crust we call solid ground. This hidden geothermal power does not just create lethal landscapes, it also holds the key to incredible resources, a potential that humanity has only just begun to tap. The relentless sea off the coast of England is performing a live dissection of the land. The Holderness coastline is vanishing before our eyes, crumbling into the North Sea at a staggering rate of 2 meters every single year. This is not a slow geological process, but a rapid, ongoing collapse. The reason lies in the very ground it is made of: soft, unconsolidated cliffs of glacial till, essentially compacted sand and clay left behind by ancient ice sheets. These cliffs are no match for the powerful waves that constantly pound them, and each storm claw is another piece of the island away. Historical maps tell a heartbreaking story of retreat. Where prosperous farms and even whole villages like Ravensbourne once thrived, there is now only open water. The ruins of medieval churches that were built a safe distance from the sea now lie submerged, their foundations scoured by the tides. This is a landscape in constant, visible retreat, a stark lesson in the impermanence of even the most solid-seeming ground. In a desperate attempt to stabilize the situation, engineers have built seawalls and rock armor to protect specific towns. But these hard defenses often create a cruel paradox. While they may save one community, they stop the natural flow of sediment down the coast. This captured sand and clay would have otherwise replenished the beaches further south, acting as a natural buffer. Now, those undefended areas are starved of material and erode even faster, a domino effect of loss engineered by our own interventions. Holderness has become a real-time laboratory, showing us how rising sea levels and intensifying storms from a changing climate are accelerating a natural geological process into a human crisis. It forces a difficult question: how do we manage a coastline that does not want to be managed? The answer may not lie in building bigger walls, but in a managed retreat, in learning to let go and allowing the land to change shape as it must. This is a quiet, ongoing catastrophe that measures loss not in sudden cataclysms, but in the steady, meters-per-year disappearance of the world we thought was permanent. The struggle to hold back the sea is a battle fought on many fronts, and in Jakarta it is being lost. This megacity of over 10 million people is not just flooding, it is actively sinking into the earth, with some northern districts descending by a staggering 25 centimeters every single year. Primary cause is not a mystery, it is the water we pull from the ground itself. Beneath the bustling streets lies a vast network of natural aquifers, underground layers of water-bearing rock. For decades, the city has drawn relentlessly from this hidden reservoir to meet the needs of its exploding population and industries. As the water is pumped out, the porous rock layers come packed, like a sponge drying out and shrinking. The ground above has no choice but to sink with it. This human-made subsidence is then catastrophically amplified by the global rise in sea levels, pushing the ocean higher as the city falls lower. The result is a city besieged by its own geography. Routine high tides now spill over seawalls into neighborhoods, and what were once occasional floods have become a constant, miserable fact of life. In a move of profound historical significance, the Indonesian government has decided the fight may be unwinnable. They have initiated plans to build an entirely new capital city, Nusantara, on the island of Borneo, effectively abandoning Jakarta as the political heart of the nation. This is not a simple relocation. It is a stark admission that the very ground beneath one of the world's great cities can no longer be trusted. Jakarta stands as a terrifyingly clear lesson for coastal megacities everywhere from Manila to Miami. It demonstrates with brutal clarity that our most basic needs, like the demand for fresh water, can directly undermine the stability of the land we build upon. We are not just living on the earth, we are actively reshaping it with every tap we turn, often with consequences we never intended. This forces a difficult question: how many of our modern cities are built on a similar, slow-motion collapse? Along the misty shores of the Pacific Northwest, entire forests stand as silent, gray skeletons. These are the ghost forests of Cascadia, and they are not a result of disease or fire, but of the ground itself giving way. The story they tell is written in salt. They grow along the Cascadia subduction zone, a place where one massive tectonic plate is slowly diving beneath another, building up immense pressure over centuries. When that pressure finally releases in a megathrust earthquake, the result is not just a violent shake, but a sudden, permanent drop in the land. In a matter of minutes, coastal forests that thrived in freshwater soil are plunged below the tidal zone, their roots inundated with salt water. The trees die where they stand, preserved in their death by the very seawater that killed them. These eerie groves are not just haunting landscapes, they are living, or rather, dying history books. By studying the tree rings of these drowned giants, scientists can read the final years of their lives. The rings show a pattern of healthy growth right up until the very last season, followed by abrupt death. This precise marker allows researchers to date these cataclysmic events with astonishing accuracy, revealing that the last great Cascadia earthquake did not strike in some distant prehistoric past, but in the year 1700. The evidence did not stop at the water's edge. Historical records from Japan document an orphan tsunami, a massive wave that struck their coast without any local earthquake to explain it. By working backwards, scientists confirmed this wave was generated by the Cascadia quake, a seismic event so powerful it sent a wall of water across the entire Pacific Ocean. These ghost forests are therefore a dual archive, a local death certificate and a global messenger. They stand as a direct, tangible warning that the ground here has done this before and will absolutely do it again. They force us to confront a landscape that appears stable and timeless, yet is capable of transforming in an instant, reminding us that the most profound changes to our world often come from the shifts we cannot see, building momentum just offshore in the dark under the sea. The same tectonic forces that can drown a forest in salt water can also transform an entire continent into a sea of sand. Just 6,000 years ago, the Sahara Desert was a world of water. Vast lakes stretched across what is now northern Chad, and rivers teemed with hippos and crocodiles. This was the Green Sahara, a sprawling savanna where early human communities hunted antelope and fished in permanent bodies of water. They left their story behind on cave walls, painting giraffes and elephants on rock faces that now rise from the most arid land on Earth. This lush world did not vanish in a sudden cataclysm, but through a slow, inexorable turn of the planetary dial. A slight shift in the Earth's orbit gradually altered the amount of solar energy the region received, which in turn shifted the monsoon rains further south. The life-giving storms that had sustained the savanna simply stopped coming. As the rain retreated, a powerful feedback loop took hold. With less water, the vegetation began to die. The sparse plant life then reflected more of the sun's heat back into the atmosphere, which further reduced rainfall. The soil, no longer held in place by roots, dried out and blew away, leaving behind the barren, sun-baked bedrock that defines the desert today. This was not a simple change in weather. It was a fundamental transformation of the land itself, a continental scale shift that unfolded over generations. The people who had thrived there were given an impossible choice: stay and perish, or leave everything they knew. This great exodus pushed populations towards the few remaining reliable sources of water, most notably the Nile River Valley. The concentration of people along the Nile, fueled by this migration from the expanding desert, provided the demographic spark that would eventually ignite the civilization of the pharaohs. The Sahara's past is a direct challenge to our perception of the world as stable. It proves that a desert can be a verdant grassland, and that a grassland can become a desert, all within the span of human history. And this process is far from over. The Sahara continues to expand southward today, creeping into the Sahel region. While natural cycles still play a role, human activities like overgrazing and deforestation are now accelerating the desert's advance, stripping the land of its fragile protective layer. The story of the Sahara is a sobering lesson written in sand. It shows us that climate change is not an abstract future threat, but a powerful geological force that has already reshaped our world, redirecting the course of human civilization. It asks us a difficult question as we watch our own climate shift. Which of our familiar landscapes might be next to undergo a transformation just as profound? The ground does not always need to swallow us. Sometimes it can offer shelter. Deep in the heart of Turkey, the wind-sculpted fairy chimneys of Cappadocia are only the surface of a much deeper story. Beneath them lies a hidden world, a multi-level labyrinth of underground cities carved directly into the soft volcanic rock. Derinkuyu is the most famous, a subterranean metropolis that could house 20,000 people, complete with living quarters, stables, churches, and wine presses, all reaching down 18 stories into the earth. This was not a temporary refuge, but a fully functioning society that could seal itself off from the world above for months at a time. The very rock they built with was a gift from geology. This soft, porous stone, known as tuff, was formed from the compressed ash of ancient volcanic eruptions. It was firm enough to be structurally sound, yet soft enough to be carved with simple hand tools. The people of Cappadocia did not fight their geology, they embraced it. They used the natural structure of the rock to their advantage, carving ventilation shafts that reached hundreds of feet up to the surface to provide fresh air, and digging deep wells to tap into the groundwater below. Every feature was a response to the land, a perfect marriage of human need and geological opportunity. These cities were a direct answer to invasion, a place to vanish when armies marched across the plains above. But their existence speaks to a profound form of resilience. It shows a people who looked at the shifting, unstable nature of their world and saw not a threat but a fortress. They turned the Earth's volatility into their greatest defense, creating a hidden civilization that was protected by the very ground it stood upon. This architectural ingenuity forces us to reconsider what it means to live with the land. We often see geology as a force to be conquered or feared, but in Cappadocia, it became a partner in survival. The silent, sprawling cities beneath the soil are a powerful lesson in adaptability, demonstrating that sometimes the safest place to be is deep within the shifting earth itself. A river can be tamed, but the land it carved remembers its power. The Colorado River spent millions of years grinding through rock, sculpting the impossible vastness of the Grand Canyon. But in the 20th century, we shackled it. A series of massive dams like Hoover and Glen Canyon were built to harness its water for cities and farms, transforming a raging, sediment-choked torrent into a controlled, placid series of reservoirs. The river was mastered, but at a profound cost to the landscape downstream. The very pulse of the river was stilled. Its legendary floods, which once scoured the canyon and spread life-giving sand and silt across its banks, were eliminated. The river below the dams became a hungry, clear flow, starved of the sediment it needed to maintain its own architecture. Without fresh sand, the beautiful beaches and vital sandbars that provided habitat for wildlife and camping spots for river runners began to vanish, washed away and never replenished. The canyon itself was growing sterile. This presented a new kind of geological problem, one entirely of our own making. We had not just changed the river, we had halted its fundamental work as a landscape architect. The solution, however, marks a radical shift in our relationship with the land. Engineers now stage controlled floods. They open the dam's giant outlet tubes in a coordinated, timed release, unleashing a torrent designed to mimic the river's lost spring floods. For several days, a wall of water rushes downstream, not to destroy, but to create. This artificial surge churns up the riverbed, suspending stored sand and silt, and carries it down river, where it is deposited strategically to rebuild those vanishing beaches and sandbars. This is not a fight against nature, but a carefully choreographed partnership with it. We are using our own technology to grant the river a temporary return to its ancient, shaping power. This practice is rooted in the science of geomorphology, the study of how water, wind, and ice sculpt the physical landscape. It acknowledges a simple, profound truth that a river is not a static ditch, but a dynamic, living system that needs room to move, to flood, and to change its own course. The story of the Colorado's managed floods is a hopeful counterpoint to tales of sinking cities and eroding coasts. It shows that our growing understanding of geology can guide us toward a more humble and intelligent form of stewardship. We are learning to work with the land's inherent restlessness, not against it, using our power not to suppress a river's spirit, but to help it breathe again. The legends whispered for centuries spoke of 7 glorious pagodas gracing the shore, 6 of them dragged beneath the waves by angry gods. At Mahabalipuram in southern India, the one surviving shore temple stood as a lonely sentinel, its story seeming more myth than history. Then the sea began to give up its secrets. During the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004, the retreating waves did something astonishing. They pulled back a massive curtain of sand to briefly reveal the outlines of submerged structures, man-made ruins lying on the seabed. This fleeting glimpse prompted a formal underwater archaeological survey which confirmed the incredible. Lying just offshore were the remains of a lost port city, scattered stone blocks, fallen walls, and even the distinct shape of a temple, all resting silently on the ocean floor. The local legend was not a fable, it was a preserved memory, an oral history passed down through generations that recorded a real geological catastrophe. The cause was not divine wrath, but the slow, relentless work of the coastline itself. This region is prone to seismic activity, and the land likely subsided during a major earthquake, dropping sections of the city permanently below sea level. That sudden drop was then amplified over the following centuries by constant coastal erosion and the global rise of the ocean, a 1-2 punch from the shifting earth and the encroaching water. The submerged temples of Mahabalipuram are a powerful bridge, connecting the intangible world of folklore to the tangible evidence of stone and sediment. They prove that ancient communities lived with the direct threat of land loss, and that their stories were a way of encoding these traumatic events, turning geological disaster into cultural narrative. Every artifact recovered from the silt is not just a relic, it is a testament to a civilization that watched its world change shape and made sure its story would not be forgotten. It makes you wonder how many other local legends, dismissed as mere folklore, are in fact the oldest and most accurate history books we have, chronicling the Earth's restless movements long before our modern science gave them a name. Our most trusted compass is leading us astray. True north, the fixed point that has guided explorers for centuries, is on the move. The Earth's magnetic North Pole is not anchored in place. It is wandering across the Arctic at an accelerating pace, shifting from its historic position in Canada and racing towards Siberia. This is not a flaw in our maps, but a fundamental change in the planet itself, driven by turmoil thousands of miles beneath our feet. The source of this motion lies in the Earth's molten outer core, a spinning sphere of liquid iron that acts like a colossal electrical generator. This geodynamo creates our planet's protective magnetic shield, but its flows are chaotic and unpredictable. Recent shifts in these deep, metallic currents are pulling the magnetic pole eastward, turning our most basic reference point into a moving target. The practical consequences are immediate and widespread. The entire aviation industry, along with smartphone mapping apps and military navigation systems, relies on an accurate model of the magnetic field called the World Magnetic Model. As the pole drifts, this model becomes obsolete, requiring emergency updates to prevent GPS systems from leading ships, planes, and even hikers dangerously off course. This silent migration forces us to constantly redraw the invisible lines that orient our modern world. It is a powerful reminder that the ground beneath us is just the surface of a far more dynamic and restless planet. The same churning core that moves the pole also generates the magnetic field that deflects deadly solar radiation, without which life on Earth would be scoured away by the sun's constant barrage. So while we do not feel this shift under our feet, the wandering pole is a direct signal from the planet's fiery heart, proof that the systems we depend on for survival are anything but static. If the very definition of north is unstable, what other fundamental truths about our world are quietly, constantly changing? The Atlantic Ocean is growing wider every second. An invisible, inexorable force is pulling the Americas further from Europe and Africa, adding new ocean floor along a submerged mountain range that runs down the center of the Atlantic like a colossal spine. This is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a 15,000-kilometer-long volcanic seam where the planet is constantly remaking itself. Here, the North American and Eurasian plates are slowly tearing away from each other, creating a gap in the thin crust of the Earth. From the chasm below, the mantle's intense heat and pressure force molten rock upward, welling out to form fresh, new seafloor. This process, called seafloor spreading, is the engine of continental drift, pushing the landmasses apart at a rate of about 2.5 centimeters each year, roughly the same speed your fingernails grow. It is a foundational force, the same mechanism that tore South America from Africa 130 million years ago to open this very ocean. This slow but relentless construction project has been running non-stop for millions of years, and it leaves a permanent record. As the new crust cools and moves away from the ridge, it locks the direction of the Earth's magnetic field into its iron-rich minerals. Scientists reading this magnetic tape have discovered a stunning pattern, stripes of normal and reversed polarity that run parallel to the ridge, providing an irrefutable timeline of the ocean's expansion and a direct record of the planet's wandering magnetic poles. This continuous creation has profound consequences. The shape and size of the Atlantic basin directly influence powerful ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, which carries warm water north to moderate the climate of Western Europe. As the ocean widens, these currents can shift, potentially altering global weather patterns and the distribution of marine life on a planetary scale. The world map we memorize today is not permanent. Project this motion forward 50 million years, and the Atlantic will be a wider, more expansive ocean, while the Pacific, its crust consumed in deep ocean trenches, will have shrunk. We live on a planetary mosaic where every piece is in motion, each with its own story of creation and destruction written in fire and stone at the bottom of the sea. While we harness rivers and pour concrete, one community learned to ask the forest for a bridge. In the cloud-drenched hills of Cherrapunji, one of the rainiest places on Earth, conventional wooden or stone structures would quickly rot and wash away. But the Kosi people discovered a different kind of architecture, one that grows stronger with every passing monsoon. They guide the long, pliable aerial roots of the native rubber fig tree across riverbanks, using hollowed-out betel nut trunks as temporary scaffolds. Over 15 to 20 years, these roots thicken and weave together, eventually forming a living, breathing bridge that can withstand the force of flash floods and support the weight of over 50 people at once. This is not construction, it is cultivation. The bridges are never finished. They are continually maintained and strengthened by the villagers, with new routes guided to reinforce the structure for future generations. This creates infrastructure that is fundamentally alive, growing and adapting in real time to the movements of the land. It heals itself after damage and becomes more resilient with age, the exact opposite of the concrete we rely on, which inevitably cracks and decays. These living bridges are a stunning act of symbiosis. The people provide the initial guidance, and the tree provides a permanent, strengthening structure, its roots gripping the rocky soil with a power no human-made foundation could ever achieve. They represent a profound shift in perspective, from dominating the landscape to collaborating with it. In a world grappling with eroding coasts and sinking cities, the Kossi offer a quiet masterclass in resilience. They do not fight the relentless, shifting wetness of their home. They have invited it to become the co-architect of their world. What if our own solutions to a changing planet could be this alive, this adaptable, and this deeply rooted in the wisdom of the place itself? The stumps of an ancient forest still stand on a Welsh beach, but they are only visible when the tide pulls back. At Borth, on the coast of Wales, the relentless sea briefly unveils a ghostly landscape from the Bronze Age. These are not just fallen logs, but the preserved remains of a woodland that thrived here over 4,500 years ago, when this was dry, fertile land stretching far out into what is now Cardigan Bay. As the last ice age released its grip on the world, sea levels began a slow, relentless climb. The rising waters saturated the ground, creating a bog that buried the forest in a thick layer of peat. This acidic, oxygen-poor environment acted as a perfect natural preservative, preventing the wood from rotting and locking the trees in a state of suspended animation for millennia. Later, wind-blown sand sealed the entire site, creating a time capsule beneath the beach. This submerged forest is not an isolated curiosity. It is a direct piece of a much larger puzzle. For centuries, locals have told the legend of Cantragwaelod, the Sunken Hundred, a wealthy and fertile kingdom protected by a series of dikes. The story goes that a negligent gatekeeper, Seithanin, failed to close the floodgates one night, and the sea rushed in, drowning the land and its people forever. The stumps at Borth are often pointed to as the physical proof of this lost world, the drowned forests of a kingdom swallowed by the waves. This is a perfect example of how a verifiable geological event, the post-glacial sea level rise, becomes woven into the fabric of cultural memory, transforming a slow environmental process into a powerful human story of loss and warning. For scientists, this site is an invaluable archive. By studying the tree rings, preserved pollen, and the peat layers, they can reconstruct a detailed picture of the ancient climate and ecosystem, understanding how the coastline changed and what forced the people of that time to abandon their homes. The message from Borth is clear and urgent. Our coastlines are not permanent boundaries, but transient zones in a constant state of negotiation between land and sea. What was once a forest became a beach, and what is a beach today may be the seabed of tomorrow. This natural cycle, however, is now accelerating, forcing us to confront the same choices the people of the Bronze Age faced: to retreat or to be consumed. In 1518, the city of Strasbourg descended into a waking nightmare. Hundreds of citizens were seized by an irresistible compulsion to dance, their bodies contorting in a frantic, days-long marathon they could not stop. They danced in the town square until their feet were bloody, collapsing from exhaustion, some even dancing themselves to death. This bizarre event, known as the Dancing Plague, has long been a historical puzzle. Some explanations point to mass psychogenic illness, a kind of social hysteria born from extreme stress and religious fervor. But another, more geological theory, whispers of an invisible culprit rising from the ground itself. In waterlogged fields where rye grain grew, a fungus called ergot can thrive. This fungus produces powerful toxins, one of which is a precursor to LSD, a substance known to cause severe muscle spasms, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes. If this contaminated bread was baked and consumed by a community, it could have triggered the collective madness that gripped Strasbourg. Yet another possibility seeps from the Earth's very cracks. In areas with volcanic activity or significant fault lines, the ground can exhale invisible gases like carbon dioxide. In high concentrations, this gas can displace oxygen, leading to disorientation, dizziness, and an altered state of consciousness. A slow, unseen leak of such a gas into a public square could have created the perfect conditions for a mass neurological event, a poisoning from below that manifested as a deadly communal dance. This strange chapter forces us to consider history through a different lens. We often search for human causes for human events, but the dancing plague suggests that the ground itself can be a silent, active participant in our story. It links the restless subterranean world of shifting gases and fungal growth to the most inexplicable human behaviors, reminding us that the line between geology and history is far thinner than we might suppose. What other strange turns in our collective past might bear the invisible fingerprint of the Earth's own volatile breath? The ground beneath Mexico City is literally vanishing. This sprawling metropolis, home to over 20 million people, is sinking into the hollow of its own past. The entire city is built upon the dried and filled lakebed of Lake Texcoco, a soft, waterlogged clay that is tragically compressible. For centuries, the city has been pumping its lifeblood from the aquifers deep below, drawing out the very water that once gave this ground its structural integrity. As the water is removed, the clay particles pack closer together, and the city has no choice but to follow, sinking downward in a slow, uneven collapse. The rate is staggering, with some parts of the city subsiding by dozens of centimeters each year. This is not a uniform descent. The ground gives way in pockets and waves, creating a landscape of profound instability. The result is a city at war with its own foundation. You can see the evidence everywhere, in the spectacular tilt of historic churches, in the deep cracks that snake through walls and pavements, and in the constant, costly battle to keep water and sewage pipes from breaking under the stress. This is a crisis engineered by our own thirst, a direct consequence of building a megacity on geologically unstable ground. The bitter irony is that the original Aztec founders of Tenochtitlan understood this land perfectly. They built their city on stilts and chinampas, or floating gardens, working in harmony with the lake rather than draining it. They adapted to the land's nature, while modern development sought to conquer it. Now, centuries later, we are grappling with the long-term consequences of that decision. Modern engineering has responded with monumental interventions, like the multi-billion-dollar drainage tunnels designed to carry away floodwaters. But these are treatments for the symptoms, not a cure for the sinking itself. The plight of Mexico City is a powerful, unsettling lesson in urban planning. It forces us to ask how many of our modern cities are built upon similar geological compromises, where the decisions of the past are now demanding their price from the future. The colossal stones of Stonehenge have kept their deepest secret for millennia. How did Neolithic people, with only simple tools, move 80 giant blue stones from the Preseli Hills in Wales all the way to the Salisbury Plain, a journey of over 150 miles? The answer may lie not in human effort alone, but in the shifting power of ancient ice. A controversial but compelling theory suggests that the journey began not with ropes and rollers, but with a glacier. During the last Great Ice Age, a massive ice sheet scraped its way across what is now Wales, and in its slow, grinding passage, It could have plucked these distinctive blue stones from their bedrock and carried them part of the distance eastward. When the climate warmed and the ice retreated, it would have left a trail of these very stones scattered across the landscape, a natural delivery service that dropped its cargo within a much more manageable distance for the builders. The Neolithic people, possessing an intimate knowledge of their land, would have recognized these stones as special, perhaps even sacred, and they would have only needed to complete the final leg of the journey. This does not diminish their achievement, it transforms it. It means they were not just mighty laborers but brilliant opportunists, reading the story written in the stones left behind by the ice and deciding to write the next chapter themselves. They saw a gift from the earth and chose to use it to reach for the heavens. The final placement of the stones reveals this profound connection between land and sky. The monument's precise alignment with the summer and winter solstices shows a deep, generations-long observation of the cosmos, an understanding of the Earth's cyclical dance with the sun. The great sarsen stones that form the outer circle were sourced locally, grounded in the immediate landscape, while the mystical blue stones, travelers from a distant land, were placed at the heart of the complex. This was a deliberate fusion of the local and the far-flung, a geological map of their world built to capture celestial light. Stonehenge, therefore, is more than a calendar or a temple. It is a monument to collaboration between humanity and the planet. It stands as a testament to how the Earth's greatest upheavals, like the slow march of glaciers, can provide the very materials for our highest aspirations, inviting us to build with the pieces left behind by a shifting world. Yet even the most solid ground can learn to float. In the heart of Manipur, India, Loktak Lake is a world of gentle motion. Its surface is carpeted with fumdis, extraordinary floating islands that are not land at all, but thick, spongy mats of decaying vegetation, soil, and organic matter. These are living rafts, some so large and stable that entire communities of fishermen have built their huts upon them, their lives literally drifting with the wind and the water's subtle currents. The fumdis are more than just platforms, they are vital ecosystems in themselves, creating a unique habitat for the endangered Sangai deer and a rich variety of birds and fish. This entire floating world exists in a perfect, delicate balance, where the slow process of new growth on top of the mat offsets the natural decay from below. But this equilibrium has been shattered. The construction of a hydroelectric project permanently altered the lake's natural water level, holding it artificially high. This single human intervention severed the fumdi's lifeline. The islands, which once drew essential nutrients from the lakebed during the dry season, were left perpetually afloat, unable to regenerate. The result has been a slow-motion disintegration, with some fumdis sinking, others breaking apart, and the intricate web of life they supported beginning to fray. These floating lands are a breathtaking example of nature's ingenuity, a dynamic system that challenges our very definition of stable ground. But they are also a stark lesson in the unintended consequences of our control over the landscape. We built a dam for power, and in doing so, we risked sinking a world that had mastered the art of floating. It forces us to ask a difficult question: can we learn to appreciate and protect the Earth's natural mobility, or must we always try to pin it in place? The Himalayas are climbing skyward right now. This colossal mountain range, home to Everest and K2, is not a finished monument to the past. It is a work in progress, rising by roughly 1 centimeter each year as the immense Indian tectonic plate continues its slow, grinding collision with Eurasia. This ongoing ascent is a direct, visible manifestation of the same continental drift that Alfred Wegener once dreamed of. The energy of that primordial crash is far from spent, and it does not just build mountains, it also stores immense stress along massive fault lines, stress that is released in the devastating earthquakes that periodically shake the region. This tectonic drama also dictates the climate for billions. The Himalayas' staggering height acts as a colossal barrier to atmospheric circulation, forcing moisture-laden monsoon winds to rise, cool, and dump their rain on the Indian subcontinent. Without this mountain wall, much of Asia would be a parched desert. The very soil of life is born from this geological struggle. The same forces that push the peaks upward also weather them down. Rain, ice, and gravity constantly erode the rock, carrying vast quantities of mineral-rich sediment down into the Ganges and Brahmaputra river systems. This endless gift of silt has built the incredibly fertile plains of Bangladesh and northern India, a lush agricultural heartland that feeds a significant portion of humanity. From the spiritual summits that touch the heavens to the life-sustaining fields below, the entire ecosystem of southern Asia is a direct consequence of this single, relentless tectonic collision. The rising Himalayas are the ultimate symbol of our dynamic planet, a place where the ground's slow-motion dance creates both profound peril and the very foundation for civilization itself. From the slow drift of continents to the sudden collapse of sinkholes, our journey has revealed a planet in constant, restless motion. The ground we take for granted is a dynamic and powerful force, one that has written our history and will inevitably chart our future. We have walked through sunken kingdoms and watched entire forests drown in saltwater, learning that stability is a comforting illusion. The Earth does not hold still for our convenience. It builds mountains, swallows coasts, and breathes invisible gases that can alter the course of human events. Our own civilizations are deeply intertwined with this restlessness, flourishing where the land provides and collapsing when it withdraws its support. The lost city of Mahabalipuram and the drowned plains of Doggerland are not just archaeological curiosities. They are stark reminders that our homes are temporary tenants on a shifting stage. The creeping expansion of the Sahara and the rapid sinking of Jakarta challenge us to adapt in real time, to rethink our relationship with the very foundation we build upon. As we face a future of accelerating climate change and unprecedented urban growth, understanding these geological dynamics is not merely academic. It is a matter of survival. It teaches us humility, reminding us that our greatest structures are no match for the planet's slow, inexorable power. This knowledge, however, is not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to inspire a more intelligent form of coexistence. We can learn to work with the land's nature, like the managed floods of the Colorado River or the living root bridges of Cherrapunji, rather than always fighting against it. Let this exploration be a beginning. The next time you walk on solid ground, look down and wonder, what ancient stories are buried just beneath your feet? What invisible shifts are happening right now, setting the stage for a world yet to come? The secrets of the land are still being written, and we are all part of the story. Share which of these geological mysteries changed your perspective in the comments, and subscribe for more journeys into the unknown.